Thanks for coming early tonight, everybody, for this poor vote turnout meeting. This is one of the best turnouts we've had all month. I'd like to introduce Florence Ellis from Elizabeth Fry Society, and she's going to come up and tell about how her society can help women who need an address so that they can be on the voters list.
Thank you, Brian. Yes, so I work with the Elizabeth Fry Society, and I see it's an audience of gentlemen. So John Howard Society would be the society that would help men. So we work with homeless women, the working poor, and if regarding the election, they're going to need an address, so they can use the Elizabeth Fry office address. Does anybody know anything about Elizabeth Fry Society here?
No.
Ever heard of it? No?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, well my job, I do life skills for women who are in conflict with the law. They may get a ticket or a fine that they cannot pay, so it gets converted to hours. It's called the Fine Options Program. That's one way they would be referred into my program, which we believe is much better than just putting them in jail. They have to spend anywhere from 40 hours to 400 hours with me, learning life skills from 9 to noon, Monday to Thursday, to work off those hours. But our hope is that they're going to reflect on their lives, where they've been, how they got to where they are today, and where they'd like to go from here, which we believe is a much more effective way of helping people than just throwing them in jail, where they're going to learn better ways to commit crimes. Whereas in our programs, it builds some inner strength, and we support them by advocating for them. We have a court program at the courthouse. We've got an Aboriginal women's program. We do cultural First Nations things, if there's First Nations, but we have women from all cultures and all ages. I just had an 82-year-old woman finish 150 hours or 200 hours. So, you know, she got a fine. She couldn't pay it. So she had to serve her time with me. So the age range is from 18 to 80. We have a financial literacy program for women. It's a match savings program. They start you out with $50, and whatever you put in, they'll match, and at the end of the 10 or 13 weeks, you have a little bit of money to buy something, a computer maybe, or a bed, or a bicycle, something that's going to improve your life. So we do run all kinds of programs at eFry, but the reason I'm here tonight is regarding the election. Just to if you know people who may not have an address and want to vote, Brian's going to round up some volunteers to help people get to the polling stations and perhaps use our address. Right?
Right.
And the men would have to go to John Howard or Business Center, maybe, I don't know. Do you have any questions? I'd rather answer questions. Mm-hmm.
Isn't the John Howard Society these days restricted to assisting parolees?
No, I think there's a misunderstanding. Same with the Fry. One time a lady came and she was absolutely offended that she'd been referred to us because she's like, well, this is just for criminals. I'm not a criminal. But we work with all women, and John Howard works with men and women. And yes, primarily, these men and women have had involvement with the law, breaking the law.
But like eFry helps helps at the courthouse. I've seen him there.
Yeah,
John Howard is totally absent. And I've been told that they're pretty well restricted to halfway house stuff.
okay. Yeah, you'll have to pardon me because I really don't know that much about John Howard other than they work with the men that we can't help. Yeah, they may not be in the courthouse, but we have an E-Fry office at the courthouse. We will help men and women there get through the court system.
So maybe you could help men with too.
We do at the courthouse. The funny thing is, when I started in the downtown office, my understanding was that we just work with women. So these men would phone and say, could you tell my lawyer I'm not coming to court or I can't make my court case? And I'm like, well, we don't work with men. Why are you phoning here? But our number is given out to the public, so they phone us and then we relay that message to our court office, E-Fry court office, and they will do that. They'll, like if you're in high level and can't make your court case, and you call in, E-Fry will do whatever they do over there.
So you do it for
Pardon me?
So you do it for men as well?
At the courthouse.
Yes.
But in our office, I would say there's no men allowed in this zone. It's our drop-in. It's a safe zone for women because a lot of these women have suffered. Yeah.
Can you give us a little background on who Elizabeth Fry the woman was?
Yes, Elizabeth Fry was a Quaker woman in England, and there's a picture of her here. Now, what I remember of her, these are the highlights I remember. So she was a Quakers, and Quakers don't believe in war. They're pacifists. And she met a lawyer, Joseph. She married him, and they had 12 children. I remember that part. But around the age of 18 or 20, she had a calling to go into the prisons and help women in prison. Because back in the day, a couple of 100 years ago in England, the prisons were men, women, and babies all in one room, filth, you can imagine. So she was the first reformer to help get women their separate place, take care of the babies, and she taught the women to sew and read, and she was a devout Quaker, so she read the Bible, or her book, with the hopes that these women could, when they were released from prison, have a skill as a seamstress, if nothing else, right? That's where it started. Back in the day with Florence Nightingale. Any other questions?
Nothing in detail of the individual case,
Mm-hmm.
but you mentioned the 80-year-old woman who came to your program because she couldn't afford to pay the fine.
Yes.
Could you speak more generally about how you see poverty and people's interaction with the justice system? Because it sort of seems like it might. I'm sort of interested because I'm wondering what an 80-year-old woman could have done to go to jail such that she's spending 150 hours in the program because she doesn't have enough money to pay a fine. But I mean, not specifically, she just talk about it in general.
Yeah, no, and this lady has raised fine, upstanding children, like I think 5. And I said, why didn't you ask them to pay? Just pay the fine. And she would not. She did not want to tell her children that it was a DUI, coming home from a Christmas party or something, so she got stopped, she blew over the limit, it's a big fine. I have a 67-year-old lady, she just finished last week, and it was driving without insurance, which I see, which often, those fines are over $2,000. And some fines you can't pay off. The courts have said you have to go to this life skills class to learn something about yourself. So, so this lady, she'd be on a fixed income. She wouldn't ask for help from her children, and she was something else. She was also taking chemo and radiation. And I did write a letter and say, look, She served 75% of her hours. She's doing chemo, radiation. Could we just, call it good? But the lady I work with said, in all her years in the system, she's never seen anyone call it good before it was done. So she served all her hours. And she fell down one day on her way to class, tripped, and fell smack here and got 3 stitches and bruising, and she took a week off and came back and finished. So it was her pride. She wouldn't ask anyone for help in this case. Now the other people, they might have mental health issues. This class is really for women who are able to reflect on their lives. Like if you've been on the street for 30 years using drugs, it's really difficult to sit and focus. So my program is kind of unique to a certain type of woman who's able to and wants to make some changes. Because we do journaling, we do sharing circles, we talk about self-esteem, family violence, addictions, the residential system of what's happened to the First Nations people, those cycles. And I hope they get an awareness of maybe why they're doing what they're doing, because they didn't understand. It just came roaring down from the past.
Okay. Yeah, so that, I'm all in favor of life skills, stuff like
Yeah.
that. I guess the question I was trying to ask is, what sort of issues do you see in your experience in the city between people having issues with the law, fines or minor fines, et cetera, and having difficulty easily resolving them because they don't have enough money?
Well, the women we see can't easily resolve their issues, yeah, so they will be put in jail, probably. They can't pay for their fines. Yeah, the jails seem to be full of girls and women that it's a generational cycle. A lot of them don't know better. They just don't know better. So how can they do better until they come into a class where it's safe and they can share and learn? Oh well, geez, my mom taught me to steal. I didn't know it was right. These criminals, I don't even like the word. These women are criminalized for stealing. I have one gal who's stole a sandwich. She became pregnant, she was hungry, she was going to school, she stole a sandwich. And that was like 10 months ago. She was with us, she had her baby, and she was still fighting that charge. To me, those are silly. I'm not saying stealing is okay. I'm not saying that. Some of the women steal because they're hungry, and some of them steal from addictions. They have addictions. And if we find that out, then we try to refer them to addictions counseling. So I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Oh, you're enlightening in different ways, yeah. I guess I don't want to call it space.
Oh yeah, no, there's a gentleman over here who put his hand
Well,
up.
I was kind of curious on how many girls come to you, or ladies, or whoever, and they ended up telling someone in your office they got refused legal aid and they had to go and look at do themselves because they probably made just over what legal aid. Because I myself have dealt with legal aid, and they're not very good to deal with at all.
It's,
And I'm just had a specific question about legal aid. How many of them have said they have not been helped by legal aid, wouldn't help them? Lots.
we do get
Yeah.
a lot of women that are really struggling, trying to find help. Yeah.
And specifically got refused from legal aid, right?
Yeah, they changed the income levels, right? So, yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem.
Florence, thank you very much for coming down.